Welcome back, everybody, to Santa Fe Fashion Week, Fashion Behind the Curtain, where we talk about all things fashion. I'm really excited to have Lucas on the line. Lucas, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm a content creator online. I make a lot of videos about um, clothing brands and across athletics, across high end designer brands, and also a marketing student right now. So been making a
Cool.
lot of content about marketing for those kinds of brands and designers.
Cool. So you kind of caught my eye scrolling through TikTok, and I came across your page, and you were talking about social media is a new runway, and so that really caught my eye, obviously, because I produce fashion shows.
Social media is the modern runway, but most brands are completely wasting its potential. Let me explain. Before the internet, runways were the place for brands to get attention through their crazy designs. But only the biggest brands had access to these elaborate shows. Now social media has knocked down that barrier, creating a digital runway open to everyone. Okay, but what does this mean? It means all brands have the opportunity to create designs specifically to get attention. Both fashion brand company and Umbro do this really well. People probably aren't buying the chainmail jersey, but it went super viral. And this isn't just for fashion brands. Electronics can be wrapped in thematic designs, or skincare put in standout packaging. If you're a brand trying to succeed on social, you should be thinking about products you can make specifically to go viral.
So can you tell us a little bit about that post and how what you're learning in school ties into maybe fashion and marketing and how that could help fashion designers?
Yeah, so the basically what I walked through in my video was about how fashion shows are kind of used to get a lot of eyes on a certain designer or a certain brand. And social media has really opened that up to any level of designer, um, really who has access to a phone. And so the kind of idea with that is designers can take an approach to their designs where they are kind of focused on what will go on social media, like what is going to get attention on social media, treating it as the runway. Um, and so what I like to think about for up and coming designers or up and coming brands is kind of how you can reverse engineer that process, thinking about thinking about like social media first or marketing first and kind of working back to what is our goal on social media? Are we trying to get eyes? Okay, when how can we make our designs in ways that will get a lot of attention on social media? And that can be through a lot of different ways. It can be through, something as simple as just a vibrant color that stands out or, interesting fabric or or you can go full on crazy like artistic designs.
That's cool. It's interesting. If you go back to like the early days of New York Fashion Week, it was called Press Week, and so back in the day, obviously there was no social media. There was, you'd go. There was, there'd be illustrators, so they'd be drawings of the show, and that was the way you would meet. You would meet the press, and they would tell the stories and the buyers and stuff like that. And then, of course, then you have photography, and then you have videography, and now you have social media. So at the end of the day, it really is about eyeballs. So it's the eyeballs back in the day where you had to go to a physical location, or like what you're talking about now on social media.
Yeah, for sure. Eyeballs is 100% everything in all business and especially for fashion. So yeah, that's a big time focus. Thinking about how you can get people to not only see your brand, but then also be interested in it where they want to follow along. And so, that's going to be happening through storytelling, through every aspect basically of you as a designer, telling what designs you're working on, what hasn't worked, how you got to where you are. Being a relentless storyteller almost is the way you're going to get eyes and attention on what you're working on.
I totally agree. When my kids were younger, we used to watch, excuse me, the TV show Chopped. Have you ever watched like on
Oh, I
Food
love
Network?
Chopped. Yeah.
Yeah, Chopped is great. And what's interesting is they always have like the little 2 or 3 minute buy-in, right? So this guy's a chef out of a Michelin restaurant in Manhattan, and then this guy works out of a food truck in Vegas, whatever. But if you didn't have that little buy-in, there would be no reason to really, root for anybody. So that whole storytelling thing is so important.
Yeah, 100%. And that's a great example because it shows how such an impactful story can be told in a small amount, which is exactly what you need in a social media context. You need your stories to be told in very quick bite-sized amounts because if it drags on too long, people are going to scroll by. So, yeah, I would any up and coming designers, I would urge you to, it might seem kind of weird and scary to be putting yourself out there like that, but it's one of those skills that is almost necessary to develop if you have any ambition as a designer to learn how to tell your story in an efficient way.
That makes sense. I think, like for Santa Fe Fashion Week, the designers that leverage it the most are the ones that they tell the story like they're getting ready for Santa Fe Fashion Week, let's say, and then they're doing a road show, so they're doing photography on the way, photo shoots on the way to the show, and they're kind of like a little mini documentary. This whole thing, so just okay, I'm going to a show, and boom, you pop up, you're at a show, but the storytelling part of it.
I think that's 100% the best way to do it on social media, is to kind of set it up as there's this big goal for you as a designer or you as a brand, and then break it down into little pieces, like step by step. Each piece of content is telling how you're getting to that goal. And then over time, people are going to follow. And then you have this big culmination and this big story put together of how you achieved this goal and what went wrong and how you overcame it. And yeah, it's super powerful like that. And you can continue that strategy over and over again for every goal you have.
I think what's really interesting too is watch these people. These some of these young designers are doing. They call them drops. So in a way too, it's more sustainable because rather than making a bunch of clothing and then hoping it sells, they'll do their story, they'll build up the hype, and then they'll make a specific amount, which again that makes it more there's less products out there, so more demand, and really hyping it up. And again, I think storytelling and some of the young people, I think are really are talented at doing that, hyping up their brands.
Yeah, drops are absolutely the way to go if you're starting out, just from a like logistical financial standpoint. But it's also really interesting for anyone who is kind of trying to grow their skills as a designer or a brand builder, because you can really completely change the entire vibe from drop to drop, and maybe try to pull in different people and see exactly what's resonating from a design standpoint and from a storytelling, marketing, branding standpoint as well.
That's interesting. I think also what you're seeing a lot more of, I think small brands, but more of these bigger brands, is they're almost stepping away from fashion shows and doing what I call these fashion films. It could either be like a documentary of like a day in a life or a behind the scenes of a photo shoot, or the bigger brands have a really big budget. It's almost more of a production, so it's three-dimensional. And then rather than having guests, you're literally shooting this fashion film, if you will, and then it lives on social media. So again, it's eyeballs. And to me, like I'm doing more of this fashion behind the curtain, where I'm bringing the back of the house to the front of the house, where people can kind of immerse themselves in it. I think the runway show, you know, is really kind of played out. You sit there, and the Killer Kids are kind of like behind the curtain and all that excitement, and everybody else is kind of just watching the final product sitting in this room, if you will. So I think like fashion films and was it Casey Neistat? I don't know if it was ever a big
Yeah, I
fan
love
of
Casey Neistat.
yeah, Casey Neistat. And a lot of people thought, oh, it's just, it's like Seinfeld, where it's a story about nothing. But really, he was really good at doing a story arc, Casey Neistat. So even though it was like shooting in different places in Manhattan, there was a story in every video. And I think going back to fashion, like what you're saying too, is it is about storytelling, building brand awareness. And I'm 61 years old now, and you go back to when I was younger, it was ABC, NBC, CBS, and you really had to have a big budget to reach people. And now, yeah, I mean, there's a lot more competition, but if your story is compelling, people tune in and hopefully fall in love with your brand.
Yeah, exactly. And then that original video I posted about kind of fashion being or social media being a modern runway is really about the way it's opened up for everyone. So in a sense where anyone who has a cell phone can, be telling their story online, can be making videos. And you don't need to be having this big budget or have the connections to the big networks. And so anyone should be taking advantage of that 100%.
Definitely. I think for a lot of people too, I'm a wannabe actor. In fact, I have an audition tonight. It's all self-taping, but a lot of people, I think a lot of fashion designers, well, people in general, but fashion designers are introverts, and they may think that, maybe they have the best fashion in the world, or they think they have the best fashion in the world, but I think a piece of clothing that has a story behind it. So again, let's say somebody goes to a fashion show and like, oh, I bought this item off the runway, so there's a story behind that. And going back to, kind of come full circle with the TV show Chopped, or your favorite athlete, where you feel like the story behind the athlete or the chef, or now the fashion designer's like, yeah, I like what that person makes, but man, that story really resonates with me, and that's why I want to buy that outfit and support that designer rather than just walk into H&M and say, oh, I bought something really cheap.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the stuff I do on my page is about more luxury, high end strategies, because most designers, that's what they're aiming for, is to be selling the more high end product with a higher markup. And that's exactly what it takes to get there. You have to be putting in the hours, telling the
Mhm.
story, applying interesting visuals, creative direction, stuff like that. And it all has to come together in one big piece and kind of be thought together as a cohesive, piece of art almost, along with the designs.
Exactly. Yeah, it's true. It's the profit margins are in the brand, because otherwise it's
Yes.
a race to the bottom. It's like who has the cheapest product. But if you're gonna, and that's why I think a lot of the big brands with the big names are able to squeeze a little bit more money. There's a guy on TikTok that he's into leather. You may have seen him, and he'll buy an expensive piece of, a purse or something like that, or a jacket. And he'll break it down. It's like this really only cost this much money to make this. When
Yeah.
you look at the materials and the labor, and then of course the marketing is a big piece of it. But it's that brand where people can walk around and, like peacocking and say, look, look what I bought, and don't know. I think it's very interesting. No, well, you definitely caught my eye. So you're in college right now. How far along are you?
Graduating in May.
Congratulations, congratulations. And
Appreciate
where
it.
are you hoping to go from there, like with your degree?
We'll see. I've been picking up recently through my content, picking up some people reaching out, wanting to work together. So might just start, doing some freelance creative direction, social media stuff. We'll see. We'll see how it goes.
That's great. And then what city are you in again?
Madison,
Madison. So what's
Wisconsin.
the scene like for fashion out there, or do you think you'd have to move out of Madison?
It's not, it's kind of a smaller scene. It's a smaller city in general. But it definitely exists here for sure.
Mhm.
You just got to kind of seek it out and find it. But I almost look at it as it's like an opportunity to really grow that in the
That's
city.
cool. And then, as you get big enough, you could be hired gun. We'll fly you out to different places and you could create really cool content. So,
Yeah, for sure.
well, cool. We covered a lot of ground. Any other thoughts or advice you give to maybe fashion designers to build their brand?
Yeah, the main advice is to be a relentless storyteller and be thinking about everything you do as a piece of your story and how that can be turned into content for your social media.
That's great. And I'll link your social media to our podcast. Well, I want to thank everybody for tuning into our podcast. If you'd like to be a guest on Santa Fe Fashion Week, Fashion Behind the Curtain, please reach out to me. And you can find us on YouTube as well as your favorite podcast channel. Thanks again. Thanks again, Lucas. I appreciate you, man.
Yeah, thanks.